Thank you for joining, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute to let some more folks in. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to those behind the East Coast. Welcome to today's webinar, Eyewitness Palestine, where it all began. We're really excited to have this conversation with you all, and in a moment, I'll introduce our ED and who will introduce our guest speaker. Um, but for those of you that are new to us and our work, we are Eyewitness Palestine, and we're serving a mission to provide educational opportunities and resources so that folks can become lifelong and transformative organizers for Palestine and for other social justice issues in their own communities. We do this primarily through webinars like the ones we have today, as well as through organizing delegations for people to be able to visit Palestine and meet directly with advocates and families on the ground. So we have a few upcoming events that I will show you. This Wednesday, we're having an event with the Right to Education campaign at Birzeit University in the West Bank, along with a student from Al-Quds University in Jerusalem, to talk about the impact of the occupation on Palestinians' rights to education. And this event is being co-hosted by faculty and students for justice in Palestine at the City University of New York, featuring students and faculty that have been active and part of the encampments over the last year. So we'll be having students in conversation with each other about their organizing for Palestine and about Palestinians' conditions of their education under occupation. So that'll be this Wednesday, starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and we'll put the registration link in the chat. Next Wednesday, at 12 Eastern, you can join us for our monthly virtual delegation to Al Amadi Refugee Camp, which is one of the smallest refugee camps in the West Bank. So the event will feature a video tour of the camp, as well as some live time for discussion and Q&A with one of Eyewitness Palestine's hosts and partners in the camp. And we'll put the registration link to that in the chat as well. Finally, we will be soon announcing dates for our next open delegation, which will take place in February of next year. If you're interested in getting more information about that and traveling to Palestine, we will put our interest form in the chat as well. So I would now like to turn it over to our executive director, Nancy Mansour, who will take us through the rest of the event.
Thank you, Christian. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am super excited about this webinar because I know Joe's story. I got to tell it in June. And funnily enough, a lot of people don't know how Eyewitness was started, which is why I thought this would be interesting. It's quite a deep story, which we'll get into in just a little bit. I do want to encourage people to sign up to our mailing list for upcoming delegations, events, and also mutual aid partnerships that we've been doing with various organizations on the ground in Palestine. I do want to highlight that we have just launched our end of year fundraising campaign, I should say. And so, of course, we're going to be asking for donations throughout this webinar, disclaimer. So we will put the link into the chat. And if you are able to make a donation, please do. We started our end of year fundraising, speaking to many of our longtime supporters and major donors who pledged 50,000 to get us started, and now we're trying to match that 50,000. We reached that 50,000 within a week and a half, which is amazing. We appreciate everybody. We couldn't do this work without our donors. And that's why it's important also for folks to hear about where this started and, why Joe has kept this going for 23 years. Um, it's a long time. And I know there's been moments that have probably been difficult, which we'll get into as well, um, where some people may have given up or just felt like, okay, you do your run and that's it. But um, we are we're in flight, and it's been going amazing this last year, despite everything that's happening on the ground in Palestine, which makes it even more important for people to be able to visit and see for themselves. Now, even more destruction, harassment, and death that we're seeing. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce the co-founder of originally Interfaith Peace Builders, which is now Eyewitness Palestine, Mr. Joe Groves. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
How are you today?
Oh, doing pretty well, thanks.
So we said this is going to be a very relaxed conversation. And
Yeah,
I'm going to say when I first had my two interviews, when I came for this position, I was scared of you, Joe.
good.
But Joe is the coolest, laid back guy, honestly. You've been amazing. And that was one of the things that, just seeing everything that you've done over the years and also following Eyewitness Palestine myself prior to becoming the executive director, I was really interested in your story. And so when we had our first annual benefit fundraising benefit in June in Chicago, um, that was why we wanted to honor you. And I had that conversation with you, which really, really, really was interesting. So I want you to just tell folks, it's going to be kind of a few parts, but your introduction to Palestine, right? Which I know includes you going to teach abroad. Uh, so will you tell us a little bit about that? You going to teach abroad, the folks that you met, and your whole introduction to the Palestine issue.
Sure. When I graduated from Georgia Tech in 1966, um, I I um, I was good good old Georgia boy. I had never been west of Nashville or north of Washington, D.C. And I was offered a position by the Presbyterian Church to teach science, build science labs, create a science and English program at the School of High Hope in Basra, Iraq. Um, so my first plane flight and first time out of the South was to Iraq. Um, and I went in 1966, and in June 1967, we were sitting in the teacher's lounge at the School of High Hope early in the morning. And one of the Arab teachers at the school, Nabil, came into the room, and just I've never seen a face as white as a sheet as his, and he said, "The Israelis are bombing Gaza," and Nabil was a Gaza refugee. He had uh, his family had fled from Ashkelon to Gaza in 48, and Nabil had managed to get to Egypt to um, do a science degree. And he and I became really close friends in that first year that I was in Iraq. We were the same age. Um, we were building this science curriculum together, where um, we did mutual translations of various um, pieces. I was teaching chemistry. Nabil was teaching biology. And, we were good friends. And I first heard of the Six-Day War as Nabil told me about it. Um, and I experienced the Six-Day War looking at it with a Palestinian. And in Basra, the Six-Day War was very complicated uh, because in the first day of the war, there were rumors that the U.S. was bombarding Gaza as well, and Palestinians from the Palestinian refugee camp in Basra stormed the U.S. consulate in Basra and burned it to the ground. And the rumor was that we were next. The school was next because we were the only other American institution in the city. And as we were sitting, trying to, as the American staff of the school was sitting and trying to decide what we were going to do, there was a knock on the door, and Nabil and Ibrahim, the senior teacher at the senior Arab teacher at the school, came into the room and said, "We're going to the whole staff has agreed that we're going to sleep in the school tonight, the whole Arab staff, and we will put out the word in the neighborhood that that if you attack the school, you're going to attack Arabs, your friends, your neighbors who are sleeping at the school." And while this was aimed at the whole population of Basra, it was particularly aimed at the Palestinian population. Both Nabil and Ibrahim were Palestinian refugees. So that's how I started to really see the Palestinian conflict, is in the presence of Nabil and Ibrahim. And after the first year after 1967, Nabil and I continued to work together, but he was a changed person. Somebody who had been exuberant, outgoing, wonderful friend became withdrawn and quiet, and troubled. And it made sense to me. At the end of the year, end of that second year, after the 67, 68 school year, Nabil resigned and left the school. And I learned later from Ibrahim that Nabil had been asked by the PLO to testify that I was an American spy. And Nabil refused to do it. He chose honor, friendship, over the will of part of the Palestinian community. And in 1968, this was the first year of Ba'ath control of Iraq. And Saddam Hussein was the Minister of the Interior. And the experience of 68 and 69 was if you were arrested and put in prison, you did not reappear. I know of one person out of the 20 something people I knew who were arrested that we ever saw again. And if Nabil had denounced me as an American spy, it's very likely I would have been arrested. So basically, I have always felt I owed Nabil my life. Um, and the experience of going through the Six-Day War in his company and then what he did for me afterwards, it got me started on Palestine. And
Can I stop you for 1 second? You said that you may have been arrested, but you also witnessed something in the square across from the school, no?
yes,
It may not have just been an arrest, I mean, in all.
yeah, um, in the in January 1969, um, uh, Saddam, as Minister of Interior, started, well, he did unannounced arrests. And we had, people simply disappearing from Basra, um, including one of our good friends and five other people that I knew. And a few days after they disappeared, um, they appeared, their bodies appeared in the square that was a block away from the school, hanging. Um, there were 36 people publicly hung that day, 18 of them from Basra, and their bodies were returned to Basra, hung in the square, and signs were placed around their neck um, saying Israeli American spy. Um, and the bodies were left there for a week. And I knew six of the people who were hung that day. So, that that was after I had heard that Nabil had refused to denounce me. And it wasn't until then that I realized just what he had done for me. So that's those events created my lifelong involvement in Palestine, and also to me created, I mean, that lifelong involvement in part, I feel, is an obligation to uh, stand with those who stood by me in that period. Um, so that's part one, how I got involved in Palestine.
Yeah, that's oh, sorry. Um, that's a big part that a lot of the board didn't know that. I don't think do you talk about that a lot or it's not really?
No, it's not something I particularly want to talk about. I only share that with certain people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I was, yeah, when I heard it right before our event in June, I was like, this is, I mean, it's important. I'm always interested in how people's journeys are into, the Palestine movement. How do people learn about Palestine and why they're involved, especially behind an organization that's been around 23 years and gone through some changes. So let's go back. So you then actually took a trip to Palestine. Can you tell us about you going to Palestine and then meeting the other co-founder, rest in peace, Scott Kennedy.
Yeah. Um, just a lead up to the trip to Palestine because I did not go to Palestine until the first Intifada in 1989. I went in 1989, and um, the reason I didn't go until then was I really could not bear to go to the occupied territory um, until there was the uprising. And then I had to go. But before I get to that trip, just a word of about the part of the impact of Iraq. When I came back from Iraq, I went to seminary, Louisville Presbyterian Seminary, and Iraq had um, prepared me as I was a an activist in seminary, really prepared me to listen to um, Franz Fanon, um, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, all of whom were talking about uh, really settler colonialism then. Um, we didn't use that term in the late 60s, but we knew about settler colonialism, and it was very easy for me to connect to that because of my experiences in Iraq, where I had seen British colonialism at work, um, and uh, seen the impact. And when I came back, I always inter interlocked work on racial and social justice in the U.S. and Palestine. Um, and uh, you know, when I was working on in the Black liberation movement in the U.S., I always raised Palestine and connected Palestine. So from the beginning, I was interlinking those since I was, and racial and social justice was, and the Black liberation struggle were very important because I was a Southern boy, and I had um, experienced the impact of white supremacy, and I had come to understand it and radically oppose it. So I saw, the civil rights struggle, Black liberation struggle, and the Palestinian struggle as all part of a struggle against white supremacy. Um, the first, my first trip to Palestine, as I said, was during the Intifada, and I went on a delegation with the uh, Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, the ADC, on a delegation called Eyewitness Israel, because at that point we still weren't using the word Palestine that freely and loosely, loosely, right? Um, so I went on a delegation. It was, it had an incredible impact on me, and I knew that I had to come back and do a deeper level of engagement with Palestine. And uh, one day I was talking with, friends of mine in a picket line in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I was living, and saying this summer I'm going to Santa Cruz, California, because my wife's working at the Shakespeare Festival there. And both of them said, "Oh, you should get in touch with Scott Kennedy at the Resource Center for Nonviolence. So when I went to Santa Cruz, I did. And after a 2-hour lunch with Scott, I was helping him organize a speaking tour in the U.S. for Zugby, for those of you who know Zugby. And I was on the steering committee for Middle East Witness, which was a delegation program based on the work of Witness for Peace in Nicaragua. And that's the way Scott worked. If he connected with someone, he immediately put you to work. And so I immediately went into delegation work and stayed with delegation work in Middle East Witness, and I went on a couple of other delegations. Middle East Witness folded when the Oslo Accords came into force, as did many pro-Palestinian organizations. There wasn't a need for delegations. Peace is going to come. Yeah, that's how I got started with Scott. And Nancy, do you want me to go ahead, or do you want to?
What wasn't there a delegation called Eyewitness?
Israel. That's what I mentioned that, yes.
Eyewitness Israel. So so first of all, I'm just going to ask folks again, if you are able to donate, please do. This is part of our end of year fundraising campaign, to let you know where it started, and we will be going through the years. I do want you to get into IFPB, under the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and how that became its own program, its own organization, and then the transition into Eyewitness Palestine. And as you talk, I'm going to be showing pictures of Joe. Some of them may be scary. I love them. I'm gonna show the pictures as you talk. So yeah, just over the years doing the delegations and the changes, until changing the name to Eyewitness Palestine.
Okay, sure. So we're up to I'm gonna jump to 2000 now. Well, actually 2001. And by the way, I'll do this, and I hope when we are having a conversation that Mike Daly and Gretchen Merriman Lotz, who I see are on the webinar, I hope you will elaborate and correct uh, on Interfaith Peace Builders and Eyewitness Palestine, because you know as much about the organization as I do. And so in 2001, the Fellowship of Reconciliation responded to some of their long time, and Scott Kennedy was the chair of the board at that point. The Fellowship of Reconciliation responded to a call from Palestinians and Israelis to step up the FOR's work on Palestine, because they saw, they knew that the Second Intifada was coming and was going to be an extremely difficult time. So FOR did and created Interfaith Peace Builders. I actually didn't found Interfaith Peace Builders. That was done by an FOR staff person. But then that staff person left after 6 months. And having done only one delegation, and the program was leaderless, staffless except for an intern. And Scott asked me to supervise the intern. And I said, you can't have simply an intern run this program. You've got to have a staff person who is part of the program. And Scott said, okay. So I became the director of Interfaith Peace Builders about 6 months after it started, in September 2001. And note the date. My work with Interfaith Peace Builders began about 2 weeks after 9/11. So, we've been in difficult situations from the beginning. And during the period, we were a program of the Fellowship of Reconciliation for 5 years or 6 years, depending on how you count the time. And in that time, Gretchen was the FOR fellow for 2 years, who did most of the running of the program, and I was directing the program and running interference with the FOR staff. And Mike joined the staff, I guess the 3rd year into the program. So, we have 2 of the really early staff people on this call. And we struggled with FOR because FOR's vision of this program of Interfaith Peace Builders was interfaith dialogue during the Second Intifada, where dialogue was not what was happening, and dialogue had ceased and had failed. And the Palestinians and Israelis that we were working with were asking us to be a solidarity program, not a dialogue program. And that's what I wanted to do, what we wanted to do. And so it was a struggle for the entire time that we were with the Fellowship of Reconciliation. And fortunately, we had a very, very supportive executive director, but a lot of skepticism and opposition from the FOR board and other people in FOR. And then finally, in 2006, FOR experienced a financial crisis, and we were continuing to struggle with this different idea of a mission for Interfaith Peace Builders. And when the financial crisis hit, it was clear that, the staff at that point was me, Mike, and a 1-year FOR fellow. And it was clear that if we continued with FOR, either Mike or I were going to be fired. There just wasn't the money for 2 staff people. And we got together, and I talked with Scott Kennedy and Elise Cohen and a number of other people who were deeply involved in Interfaith Peace Builders and with FOR. And I said, let's break off from FOR, become an independent 501c3. Because one of our problems was that while we had a wonderful set of delegates and potential donors and people interested, we couldn't fundraise. So we said, let's take the risk that this community that we have already created you know, a couple of hundred delegates at that point, and a couple of hundred donors. Let's see if we can make this work as a nonprofit. And we did. Um, we became independent in 2006, um, and here we are. And with FOR, with Interfaith Peace Builders, there are several things when Scott and I planned the program or reformed the program that we wanted to accomplish. One was to have have a delegation program that lasted, because one of Scott's experience and my experiences was that delegation programs come, an organization runs them for 2, 3, maybe 5 years, and they disappear. And, there is no legacy with the program. There is no ongoing community. We wanted a program that would last. And here we are. And, it's quite remarkable, frankly. You just don't see Palestine delegation programs that are around 23 years after they were started. You don't see it. Second thing is that we wanted a program that worked very closely with Palestinian partners, and that we listened to Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza more about what they wanted, more than we did American organizations, including FOR that we were part of. And we did that, and we're continuing to do that. And a third thing is we wanted a delegation program that created a community in the U.S. and I continued activist work, because one of our other experiences with delegations was a delegation would go, they would have this incredible experience with whether it be Eyewitness Israel or other delegation programs. They go, they would have an incredible experience. They would come home and they got no support. They're left on their own. And that does not create a sustained effect. It doesn't really build the Palestinian solidarity movement that much, because people are left just wondering. So it was our goal to connect people, keep people connected, as much as possible, form a community of Interfaith Peace Builders delegates, but even more to connect those people with local work and with national work in other organizations. And we always found that the most difficult piece of work to do, to raise money to do, and to do, because of, as all of us probably know, the difficulties of organizing around the Palestinian issue. And really succeeding in that area was my greatest area of frustration in building the program that we wanted. And one of the things that excites me about Eyewitness Palestine now is that I think we are better positioned than ever to really build that work in the United States and, bring back more effectively the work of delegates. to here and have it bear on the work in the U.S. By the way, the change from Interfaith Peace Builders to Eyewitness Palestine, um, long overdue. Um, I didn't choose the name. I never liked the name. It was an effective name. It We sounded innocuous enough to the Israelis that it was easier to get in and out, although that did not always happen, to Israel. So we stuck with Interfaith Peace Builders for a long time, but it never really described what our program was. Eyewitness Palestine describes it. And I was really happy that we renamed so that we could be clearer about what the organization had always been about. And it has proved effective doing that too.
Thank you, Joe. Um, so where we are now, um, how do you feel about where Eyewitness Palestine is now? I know that I started last June 2023. And within a month or so, put together two delegations that were going to go out that year. And then we had our tickets set to leave on October 8th, and boom, they were canceled on October 7th. And but we did manage to get 10 doctors to Gaza. I was able to lead that mission in March of this year. We've also been doing a lot of the mutual aid partnership programs. People have been coming to our webinars from the virtual delegations to also supporting Palestinian organizations on the ground, which is even more important right now, especially since there isn't as much support and movement and as many people going. And so a lot of organizations are struggling on the ground in Palestine. So we feel great. I mean, from our webinars last year, we raised $68,000 and we were able to donate about 50,000 to different orgs on the ground in Palestine. So it's been amazing. And again, we can't do this without the support of our donors, who some I've, just in the last year and a half, have got to know a little bit. And, I don't know if people really realize that without the support and donations that we get, we wouldn't be able to do this work. Like, we know how to do the work, but we also need the money to do it. So we really do appreciate everybody. Everyone has a role. And so I just want to, give flowers where they're due and just, let everybody know that we appreciate their support. And they are part of Eyewitness Palestine as we grow. But how do you feel? Don't just be nice because I'm here. But how do you feel about the direction Eyewitness has taken? And we do have a delegation going out December, which I'm really excited about as well. But we have 3 new staff members that we just hired in the last couple of months. So if you guys go to our website under our team, you can see our wonderful new staff that have been working really hard just in the last few months that they've been with us. But I'd love to get your, just how you see it, having been in this for so long.
Yeah, I'm really excited about where we are as Eyewitness Palestine. Uh, Things are quite different now than when we formed the organization, and they better be. The needs have changed, the times have changed, the situation has changed, and what I'm excited about is that with all those changes, I feel that Eyewitness Palestine is carrying out those values that Scott and I really started with in 2001, and now Eyewitness Palestine is maintaining those values and working to fulfill them in ways that are going to be different, and that's that's just really important and, to me, exciting growth and development of Eyewitness Palestine. And I'm just getting to know the new staff, and still feel I'm getting to know you too, Nancy. I think you're giving great leadership to Eyewitness Palestine, and that we are connecting with particularly the Palestinian solidarity movement in a new and I think deeper way than we used to. And to me, all of that is good. You know, I the struggle is that we were, founded as a delegation organization, working back here, but with a mission to take delegations. And for obvious reasons, we've been really limited in how we do that. And I think the December delegation and the February delegation are going to be very, very important milestones for where we are now, because we will see with those delegations how we can now really start to, build that delegation work back up. That is a key component in developing Eyewitness Palestine as a community and contributing really significantly to Palestinian work in the U.S. So I'm happy. I'm excited.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I am too. I really am. Um, I do want to say on that note too, if anybody in here is part of an organization anywhere in the US, we are compiling a kind of a handbook that we're going to be giving to delegates post delegation. And so what we're doing is trying to compile all the different organizations who are led by different movements in different areas so that they can go to this handbook and find somebody in their area that they can connect with when they come back. And so if anybody's interested in putting their org down or being just somebody in that area that knows of organizations, please do connect with us. Our communications coordinator, Hamad, he will put his email in the chat. But please feel free to send him info on the org and he'll connect with you via email and later on a call, hopefully. But we'd love to include, everybody and anybody that's doing the work so that people come back and, they might be in a little town somewhere and they don't know who to connect with. And everybody knows that's been to Palestine when you come back, how frustrating it can be, trying to talk about your trip and you feel like nobody understands, you know what I mean? So it's really good to be able to have that network and that community where you live when you get back. So we are building that, which we know will take time, but I think that's a very important part of these delegations when folks come back. So what I do want to do, I've never met Gretchen. I've spoken to Mike, but they're both here. So if they don't mind putting them on the spot, boom. Can we invite them up? Where is, let me find, there you go. See, our team's on point. I'm not even touching it.
Hey,
Um,
Gretchen.
and is Mike still here? Oh no. Where did Mike go? Oh, there he is. Hi. Mike was in some of those pictures, weren't you, Mike? Um, I just love to hear from you guys, having I didn't know you were with EP way back when. But it would just be really interesting just to hear, how your journey's been and then just seeing the changes in EP too. Oh, let me give it to you. There you go. Can you now, Gretchen?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Joe. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Gretchen.
Kind of fun little reunion here.
Yeah.
Um, Joe, it's just so lovely to see you again, and this legacy that you have left is just so powerful. I came on board right after the first delegation was denied entry. And I don't know if you're still doing it, but during those days, you'd bring people back to DC and set up meetings with their representatives. It was really powerful work. I had just come back from living, I guess, 2.5 years, 3 years in Ramallah, working at Birzeit University and witnessing, the start of the second Intifada. And I was pretty, pretty pretty traumatized by that. And it was really wonderful to find IFPB and FOR and to find people who were doing such meaningful work and find a really substantial way to plug in to carry on this work. And yeah, the part that was so meaningful to me was that you would support the people coming back to connect into their faith communities, their work communities, to share what because I thought education was such a key component, because as an American, I didn't know before I went over there. So yeah, and the power of personal witness to your people who listen is your family, friends, community. So yeah, it was a really neat experience. Very proud to be a part of it.
And you were key to making it work those 2 years that you were here, believe me. Not sure where we would be if you had not been on staff for those 2 years.
Yeah, if I could jump in for a second, it seemed only appropriate for Gretchen to go first. And thanks for the surprise here, Nancy and Joe. But yeah, I'll be forever grateful to Gretchen and Joe for taking a chance on me and hiring me. I remember my interview, I was in Damascus, Syria, and couldn't even say the word Palestine. So that was interesting. But yeah, lots of gratitude to both of them, who did build such a strong program, to Kendra, who was there at that time too, and to others like Elise Cohen and Scott, who's been mentioned, Ali Perry. I think there are a lot of people who helped birth EP as an independent thing. Apologies, and on two levels. One, that this will be recorded, and two, but I had to step away for about 10 minutes when Joe was talking about sort of that formative period. We have a repair person here, so I missed some of whatever half-truths Joe may have been telling then. But yes, it was an amazingly important time for me in my learning. Like Gretchen, I too had lived in Palestine during the Al-Aqsa, our second Intifada, and had come back looking for a way to educate Americans about this. And there really, I don't believe, was a better vehicle than Eyewitness Palestine. I just looked down and saw Donna on my screen. I want to thank Donna too, who I know worked on some of those earlier delegation programs that gave us important lessons about how to do orientation, and to Gretchen's point about how to help prepare people when they got back. So we stand on a lot of shoulders. Nancy, you didn't ask me this, but as someone who left 7 years ago for New Adventures at U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, I've been so proud of everything IFPB and then EP has done since then. Literally kind of speechless in terms of how you all navigated the pandemic when the whole model was taking people over there. Have really sung your praises for navigating that and everything you've done, Nancy, since you came on. Love the board members and just feel good. Yeah, I think we're entering, and everyone knows this on the call, but a dark period where nonprofits are going to be targeted more and more. And so I hope people are giving Nancy to the fundraiser. I hope they're giving double, because we're going to need it going into this next period. It's going to be challenging. I know that you all are equipped with folks to meet the challenge, but we're definitely going to need resources. So kudos to all you're doing, and thanks for a little bit of airtime. And Joe, love you. Thanks for sharing the story. I've heard that story so many times, and I still learned things I didn't know about the time in Iraq. Literally, I did. And so that was really touching. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. And I'm sorry that that Mike missed that piece, because I was looking forward to him correcting some of the half-truths that I was talking about, that I was telling. And Gretchen was being very polite to not do that. So they both are very good at calling me out on stuff like that. So I wish they had done that. They would been in position to do that a bit more.
We've added Donna to the mix.
Yes.
Hi, Donna.
Hi. This is really doing me a lot of good. I deeply appreciate it. I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and once upon a time, there was this guy named Jim Lewis, who was the Christian Social Ministries Director for the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina. And he decided that he was going to try to organize a delegation to Israel and Palestine. He ended up not being able to go on the trip, but this was back in 1991, and it was with Middle East Witness, and Joe Groves prepped us for that trip. And it was a barely interfaith group. We had an imam from Greensboro, whose last name I think is Griggs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Joe.
Yes.
And we had a Jewish man from Chapel Hill, and I think the rest of us were Christians. Jimmy Creech was with the North Carolina Council of Churches. So that started me on my journey around Israel and Palestine. I ended up going with Christian Peacemaker Teams, which is now Community Peacemaker Teams, in 2002. So I had the privilege of hosting Eyewitness Palestine and Interfaith Peace Builder delegations in Hebron when I was on team. And, you know, this is so good. We're going through such a hard time now, struggling with our feelings, looking at the situation on the ground, looking at all of our friends and colleagues. So I'm very glad, Nancy, that you organized this. Oh, and Gretchen, I think we met before you had a hyphenated last name. And I think it was in Jerusalem. And I think I remember having a conversation with you on a bench at St. George's College. So that's sort of my story. And my work now is with the Episcopal Peace Fellowship's Palestine-Israel Network.
Thank you, Donna.
Donna is also in her polite mode. She usually says, thank you, Joe, for wrecking my life. Are you getting me involved in Palestine? So this is Donna's polite version.
Nobody can ever be mad at being introduced to Palestine, because when you're introduced to Palestine, the number one thing is the food, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you, Donna. So, Joe, we're going to open it up for Q&A. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put your hand up. We are going to open the mics on this one. I have a question for you, and I don't know, I haven't asked you yet. But have you spoken to Nabil? When was the last time you spoke to Nabil?
In 1968, because it was well, in 1969 in Iraq, as a result of the public executions, it was unsafe for us to, as Americans, to talk to any Iraqis outside of the school staff. So we had to cut off all social relationships with Iraqis and Palestinians in that period. And it was also unsafe for Iraqis and Palestinians for us to contact. Oh, I left out one thing. We were deported in June 1969. So after we were deported, it was unsafe for us, for the Iraqis or Palestinians, for us to be in touch with them. So I was never able to recontact Nabil or any of the other friends that I had in Iraq after our deportation, which makes for a very strange situation that, you know, I still have trouble with.
Do you remember Nabil's last name?
Farhat.
Like Farhat?
Yes.
How old would he be now? You haven't seen him for 50 years,
He
so
would be, we were the same age, so he'd be 81.
all right. Maybe we'll find him and the next Zoom will be the reunion of
All
Joe
right.
and Nabil.
I'll go for that.
Hard. Palestinians, listen, we will find each other somehow. Now you've got me on a mission. I'm gonna try and find Nabil. Hopefully, he's still around and doing okay. So um we have a question. Muhammad, do you want to ask a question? Let's introduce our new communications coordinator, Muhammad Qasim. Tfaddal.
This was a really good conversation, and I heard the story from Nancy, but it's like it's a new experience hearing it from you, Joe. Thank you for sharing it. Hi, everybody. I'm Mohammed Qasim. I'm the communications coordinator at Eyewitness Palestine. This is my third month, and I can't be prouder to be working at an organization like EP. My question is, and if you want me to elaborate on it, I can, but like short uh, version of it is considering the work of Edward Said on Orientalism. How did you ensure that your discussion about Palestine and the Palestinians after your visit, and this question to everybody who also was on the panel, when coming back to the US to basically speaking to a Western audience about what you experienced, and like avoiding reinforcing stereotypes of Oriental rhetoric that basically is prominent in Western media and Western academic researches.
Well, I think one of the great values of delegation programs like this is that what our delegates see in Palestine breaks down the stereotypes. So that's one of the, to a certain extent, unspoken purposes of the delegations. Break down those stereotypes. You break down the stereotypes by meeting people, by spending time with Palestinian families, eating meals with them. Instead of just hearing a program, you sit around in the evening and you talk about things that they normally talk about, family, work, olives, olive oil, food, um, uh, and there's, and children, of course, and there's laughter and joking and so what delegations do is give you a sense of Palestinian life. And one of the ways that we, I mean, to a certain extent, the delegations did what you're asking. That is, they break down the stereotypes. And then we ask people to talk about those experiences. And they are personal experiences so that it's about the personal stories, not so much the stereotypes that Western media and academia, to a certain extent, uh, reproduce. And, along the way in the delegation, we try to give people ways that they can talk about that effectively. Um, when the delegation program is up and running, we both prepare them ahead of time with readings and discussions, group readings and discussions in an orientation. And then after the delegation, we do follow-up and follow-up seminars that directly address some of those questions. So it's a piece that really that we have always tried to keep at the forefront of Eyewitness Palestine's work, although we don't necessarily name it in that way. My tendency is to do things like that without naming them. and just letting people take it in their own personal way. So that's a lot of what we were doing.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I see Callie put currently to keep up with Palestine issues, read Jim Zogby's Monday email and logged on to Wednesday's discussion. Also read Mondaweiss. And are there any other recommendations? So folks, feel free to put some recommendations in the chat. Do we have any other questions for Joe or myself, if I can answer them? Christian, our programming and operations manager, Christian Bailey. Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay, so first I just want to make a shameless plug for folks who join late about our upcoming events. Um so I'll just share my screen here. Um on this Wednesday, we will be having an event with students from the Right to Education campaign at Birzeit University uh, outside of Ramallah, as well as students from Al-Quds University in Jerusalem, alongside students and faculty that were part of Palestine Solidarity work in encampments at City College of New York, Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. to 12 Eastern. And then next Wednesday, you can join us for a virtual delegation to Al Amari refugee camp in Ramallah, which is one of the smallest refugee camps in the West Bank. We'll have a video tour of the camp as well as time to hear live from one of our partners on the ground. So with that aside, Joe, just thank you so much for this incredible conversation and all the work that you're doing. I didn't even know this deep and rich history, so I am appreciative to be a part of it. Um, and I was really struck by um, just the timeline of where we are now and where your introduction to Palestine started with the 1967 war and hearing from someone that became a friend that was from Gaza about Gaza being bombed to where we are right now, 400 and something days into a genocide. Um, and yeah, just what I'm curious about here is what is 67 from now? I don't know, was this more than 50 years ago? Is that the right math? I can't do my math here. But just, just the difference between I'm not sure how they even got updates about what was happening on the ground and how they got to Iraq and then how they got to you. I'm assuming it's by phone. Um Speeding to a live stream genocide that we all have access to on our phones at any given moment of the day. Uh, um Yeah, I don't like I'm trying to find my exact question, but I'm curious what you've observed about the differences in yeah, how Palestine is understood among Americans, how the Solidarity movement has operated, um or even how like Palestinian partners on the ground interact with movements from 67 and whatever technological or communication methods you were using then through the pre-cell phone era to the internet era to yeah, just I'm curious how you've observed those shifts.
Okay, that's like a 2-hour question. Um, I just one thing I'll note that one of the reasons that we had a great deal of trouble making Middle East Witness a successful delegation program in 19 well, we really started in 1990 was no internet. We had to communicate by phone, and the model of Middle East Witness, we had volunteers in on the ground in Gaza and in refugee camps and stuff like long-term volunteers. And needless to say, during the First Intifada, particularly near the end of the First Intifada, they were getting into extremely dangerous situations, and we couldn't communicate sufficiently. And they were in real peril. And organizations like Christian peacemakers teams, um, you know, were able to use the internet to communicate and keep up to date, also get news out fast, uh, and also get out accurate news. When we were in Iraq in the 1960s, the only outlets were letters and phone calls, and all of our letters were opened and censored, frequently just thrown away. And all of our phone calls were tapped and monitored so that you we could say very little about what was actually happening. So I have my major quibbles with the internet and social media, but it has simply opened up a new world in the ability to get communication out. And you know, you want to, I can, like I say, for another hour, I can give you a history of organizing around Palestine, but uh, do want to say one thing. People think of the Palestinian solidarity movement as being a long-term movement. As a movement, it really isn't. It really pretty much dates from the Second Intifada, because before that, the PLO was in so much control, for better and worse, so much control over Palestinian policy and Palestinian communication. It's only since the Second Intifada that U.S. groups and international groups have been able to develop the kind of communication and interaction that we now have. And that's, and that has its strengths and its weaknesses, but I think it's a change in the way that we have been organizing that's useful to recognize. And that, we're still struggling to figure out how this independent organizing actually works. So we're still going through growing pains there.
Yeah, and that brings up so many other questions for me that I hope I can
Like I said.
another day.
Send him an email.
But yeah, I see we have other questions. So to Ron and then Donna. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I know Mike has to jump off. Really appreciate everyone that's been on here today. I also want to also uplift the work of US Campaign for Palestinian Rights. I know they've been coming under fire too, so please do support the people that are really putting in the work on this side as well. Ron, I'm gonna bring you up, and I just want to say Ron just made $1,000 donation. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. I just put a link for other folks directly in our website. And Ron, you have the floor.
Yeah, quick question for Joe. I went with EP 69, which I think was 2017 or 18, and it was largely a group of artists. And it was a very successful delegation, at least from my perspective, it was. My question is, in addition to the model of witness delegations, Joe, are you aware of any group who's tried the model of artist residencies where artists would go to Palestine and spend a month? And there's art residencies of all kinds all over the world. And I just wondered if you've heard of any in Palestine ever.
I can't name any specifically, but I know that there have been artists, yeah, a month long, yeah, up to a month long residencies. And usually those are individually done. There have been at least a couple of delegations. Um, and the problem is, again, those are sort of one-off delegations. So they, as incredible as they can be, they have not had the kind of building effect in, I think, in the arts community that we really need. But I think it's a really good, important model. And I know that, yes, that EP delegation was artist centered, and that we are thinking about future delegations that will be artist centered as well. So it's a really, really important area for us because the arts, again, can just sort of break through stereotypes and communicate in a different way that's really crucial to the movement.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear there's going to be other delegations taking artists over. And if ever anybody at EP wants to investigate the residency model, that's something I've been on different residencies, probably 5 or 6, and think it's a very powerful way of doing things. And if EP wants to look into what that might be about, I'd be happy to spend some time on that.
I'd
Thank you
love to
for
talk
all you've
to you
done. Yeah, we will talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Ron.
We have Donna. You have the floor, hon.
I just wanted to say a word about communications and how much that has changed. When I was on team with CPT from 2002 to 2009, we had a tenuous and unreliable internet connection, and it was very slow. And we didn't have smartphones to get the pictures, of course. And there have just been so many advances to get the word out that we didn't have back then, and that's what continues to amaze me. And while I get very frightened about technology and technological things, I am grateful that we've had all of these advances that help us to tell the stories.
Thank you, Donna. I say that too. I think it's so powerful. I wonder, like, if we didn't, even having it is so weird, isn't it, too? The fact, right? The fact that people are seeing everything and still justifying, like, you know what I mean? It's like a two, you you know, yeah, there's just so many layers to it. The shadow banning, you know, the silencing of certain accounts, the removing of people's accounts for telling the truth, different journalists having their accounts deleted. Not to mention that, like, some people have all their pictures on there for years and years and years of their life, it's their life story pretty much, which I guess people now should know the tactics and probably save their pictures somewhere else too, but but it is sad, and but yeah, the tools are super powerful. They didn't have that, when you think about like various ways that people were trying to bring attention to Palestine. We have so many tools at our fingertips, and so yeah, we're trying to find the most creative ways of being able to use them. And yeah, um, I feel like we're in a time where also it may be a little too, what's the word? I always before COVID, I was like, I wanted the internet to shut down for like a week because I wanted to see what the young people would do. I mean, I'm not that old, but I was just like, because there's also this thing of like thinking that this is like life, you know what I mean? And I remember when I went to Cuba in 2018, not having internet I actually felt like I went to Cuba. Do you know what I mean? Like people go on vacation and then just sit on their phone, and it's like you could sit at home and do that. And I wanted the internet to shut down just to see how people would handle it, you know? And then didn't it go down for a day like Facebook and Instagram, and it was like all hell broke loose. It was like, what were people gonna do with their lives now? But yeah, they're really powerful tools. I wish that we had a platform that wasn't run by Zionists. I wish we had a platform that, we could use as Palestinians and not be silenced for telling the truth as Palestinians. And, so there's different layers to it, but it is a completely different time. Um, do we have any other questions? It's 1:22. We have 8 minutes before we cut out. Thank you to everybody. Gretchen, thank you
I
for
have I want to make one last statement. So whenever we're finished with
Go
questions.
for it. The floor is yours.
Okay. One thing that underlies everything that I've been saying, and I haven't used the word, so I want to toss it out there, is commitment. Um, you know, in order to stay with working on Palestine as a non-Palestinian for 57 years, you know, you can't rely on hope. Certainly can't rely on success. You can't rely on the kind of markers that keep us going on struggles a lot of the time. And you know, the way I keep going is I define what I'm doing as commitment. Doesn't matter what the situation is, I am committed to working on Palestine. And that's the way that we will eventually make the progress that we need to make. And I'll challenge y'all. Uh, I challenge you to stick with working on Palestine for 57 years. Um, and, if Palestinian freedom comes next year, there's going to be even more work to do. We aren't working just to end the occupation and, arrive at Palestinian freedom. We are working to be able to build that. And the real work becomes when we really get the chance to build that. And it's going to take another 50, 57, 58 years probably, and it's going to be good work. So that's my challenge to you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate all your support that you've given me. I appreciate just everything that you've done, and also and the whole board through the period before me, which was a difficult time, and the fact that we're still here, and I believe that we are doing better than ever. And I'm excited for this delegation to go off in December. And and continue the work that you've been doing. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to the staff. Again, if you can donate, please do. We are in our end of year fundraising campaign, which this was part of. I'm very big on wanting folks to see where the money goes and, why we do this work and the people behind it. And this was part of that. And so you got it from the roots right here. Joe Groves, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing everybody on our future webinars. I don't know if you want to shout them out one more time. This Wednesday, we do have the Right to Education campaign with CCMY and Birzeit University and students from Al-Quds University in Palestine. So we're going to be connecting students from Palestine in the US, and that's going to be a powerful one. It is at 10:30 a.m. EST, but it will go on our website too. You can sign up so that you get the updates, and the link just went into the chat. And go to our website. We have an events page, upcoming events. You can sign up for the future virtual delegation on the 27th of this month, which will be in Al Amari camp in Ramallah. So thank you again. I appreciate everyone's support. And we hope to see you on one of our webinars soon, or on one of our delegations. Thank you so much. And we will be shutting down in... Oh, I can't shut it down. Larry, programmer. Larry.
We'll be shutting down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.